All right, so I'll move on to the 6:30 session, starting at 6:39. Would you please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we're moving on to petitions and communications. This is a time when anyone may address the commission regarding items that are not listed as public hearings on tonight's agenda. The public hearings on tonight's agenda are the comp plan amendment land use designation, the neighborhood grocery rezoning, and the neighborhood grocery preliminary development plan. Additionally, we would ask you would hold comments that you may have regarding any application that has been filed with the city or which is likely to be filed with the city until the public hearing on those items, where we will welcome your comments. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the commission regarding anything else? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to public hearings. At this time, I'd like to explain the procedure for public hearings. The applicant will be given an opportunity to make a presentation. After the presentation, I will ask those in favor of the applicant to speak, and then those who are in opposition to speak. The applicant will then be given an opportunity for rebuttal. I would like to now swear in anyone who wishes to speak in any public hearing matter before this commission tonight. Please raise your right hand and I'll swear you all in now. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in matters before this commission is the truth and nothing but the truth? If so, please answer, I do. Thank you. You may be seated. So the first hearing on tonight is the neighborhood. Well, I guess we'll hear all three of these together in one. Yeah. So this is the neighborhood grocery, CP 2015-0002, comp plan amendment land use designation, Z 2015-0016, neighborhood grocery rezoning, and PDP 2015-0014, neighborhood grocery preliminary development plan. Staff, are there any posting or notification requirements?
Yes, they have. I'm sorry. Yes,
yeah,
we
okay.
have. They have met all of their noticing requirements.
Okay. The staff report, posting log, and affidavit of mailing then are made a permanent part of the record. Are there any additions or corrections to the staff report?
No, there are not.
Okay. Is there a representative of the applicant present?
Yes.
Oh. Okay. We'll make these these letters from the public an additional part of the record. And now, is there a representative of the applicant who would like to? You may go ahead and proceed.
All right, good evening, and thank you for being here. I should give my address, right? So my name is Lucy Deneen. I'm a senior partner of Cadence Development. My address is 1115 South Downing, Denver, Colorado 80210. Thank you for being here tonight.
I'm sorry, Ms. Deneen, could you just spell
Deneen
for us, please?
Sure, it's Dinneen. And we do have a lot of our team members here tonight for questions later on, but in addition to myself, Rob Beery, who is also a senior partner at Cadence Development, will be here and go into kind of the deep dive into some of the architectural details, et cetera. But briefly, Cadence Development has been in Denver since 2001. We specialize in retail development here in Denver, and one of our clients is Sprouts Grocery, who we're really excited to bring to this town if we can go through this project with you and get that approved. So briefly tonight, we are going to go over the development. We're going to speak to the three specific requirements of the rezone, the comprehensive plan amendment, and the PDP. And then we're going to speak to our neighborhood outreach, the outreach efforts we've made, and we'll also give an overview of the user and their specific business to give you a good feel for that. All right, I got to remember to do this. really briefly, the staff has just been fantastic, and as we walk through this process, they've been thorough. We've had our submittals reviewed, their comments made, and our response to those comments. I think you all have their recommendation, which was approval of all 3 items. But briefly, tonight, we are focused on 15,000 West 64th Street, and we are asking for approval of a rezone of this property from its current zoning of PUD industrial to PUD BP, which is business and professional zoning. That rezone will enable us to allow us to build a small-scale grocery on this site. In addition, we're asking for approval of the amendment of the comprehensive plan from industrial to mixed-use designation. And then finally, the approval of the preliminary development plan, or the PDP, where we'll show you the specific site plan and elevations we're asking for approval for. Again, all of these have been reviewed by staff, and I think they are recommending approval in front of you. So briefly, to give you all a sense of where this site is and context, the site is on the southwest corner of Joyce and 64th Street. It exists between McIntyre and Indiana, right on that commercial corridor. That site is an existing office building today. It is completely surrounded by commercial of a mixed-use nature. It has industrial, office, and retail around it. There is no residential contiguous with it, and in fact, no roads that lead to residential. Joyce Drive dead ends, as you can see on this aerial, with an existing fence. That's just a fire access, so even Joyce Drive does not lead to residential. So the site is very commercial and surrounded by commercial. The existing site specifically is about 3 acres. You can see there's a 20,600 square foot office building that sits on it. Access to that site is off Joyce Street. There is a traffic light at Joyce Street. Currently, there is no cross access with the Walgreens. It exists as kind of a standalone office building. This picture really was designed to give you a feel for what's there today. There is an office building that was developed in the 1970s. It looks very much like that. It's sort of subterranean. It's not very exciting. It has sat vacant. It's almost approaching 9 months while they've actively tried to lease it. It's a fairly obsolete building in terms of looks, et cetera. If you look at the 64th Avenue view, which is on here on the bottom right of this corner, that's what you see from the corner. It's kind of below a berm. So it's not particularly exciting as it currently stands today, and it stands vacant. So when we came to the city to look for a site for our client, what brought us to this site was, while it's vacant as its current use and its current building, it's a very neat site for purposes of what we look for. It provided visibility, access to a high traffic intersection in terms of 35,000 cars along 64th Avenue. It was surrounded by retail as well as commercial. Our user likes to serve businesses and residences, so its location in that kind of the heart of where they wanted to be attracted us to this. The infrastructure really made sense. And again, this slide gives you a feel for that. The traffic lights are in place, the infrastructure is in place, and the contiguous uses made a lot of sense for us. The current zoning is PUD industrial, but it is contiguous with 2 areas of PUD BP. So when you see it, you can kind of make a logical leap to, maybe bridging those 2 areas with similar zoning. And again, Rob will go into greater detail about that zoning change in a minute. So what we are proposing to do is to take the existing building and demolish it and redevelop it into a 28,000 square foot new building that brings it to architectural standards that are much more consistent with what people want today, but also make it a retail use. We have, however, as you can tell, we've tried to use the existing lot to create an urban sort of footprint, activating the corner and preserving the site as best we can with a great deal of respect, but kind of an eye to what works for pedestrian connectivity. We have also, however, been able to connect the site to the Walgreens next door to create, again, a better flow and a better sense of a robust activity as this gets redeveloped. And you can see the big change is taking that old 1970s office building and really bringing to this corner a brand new elevation, brand new building that can house a national grocer. With that brief overview, Rob will go into the deep dive for you. Thanks.
Controller. Evening. Again, I'm Rob Beery, B-E-E-R-Y, with Cadence Development. I specifically handle design and entitlement for our new retail projects and or redevelopment projects. My home address is 1520 West Briarwood Avenue, Littleton, Colorado. I look forward to walking through the project with you in a little bit more detail as far as the approvals we are specifically requesting tonight, being 3 approvals. And I'd like to walk you through our building and site design in some detail. We're happy to answer questions after the presentation and zoom in to the specific boards if there are specific questions that I can't point to because I guess a laser doesn't work, but hopefully I can do a good job walking you through it nevertheless. So again, we would like to thank staff for all their diligence and help in getting this project to this point. They're very thorough, very professional. It's been a pleasure to work with staff to date, and look forward to giving you our rest of our detail this evening. As noted, our first approval is for the rezone of the property from PUD 1 Industrial existing to the PUD BP Business Professional. This isn't actually a new zoning area, I think, for the new zoning code. This first slide is comparing the existing zoning on the left, being the industrial, to the proposed business professional on the right. These are all the same uses that are still allowed in the new zoning. You can see that office, for instance, and light industrial are still permitted in the new zoning, which is promoting more mixed use. This slide kind of shows some of the specific differences of things that will be eliminated in the left box from the existing industrial zoning, which allows somewhat I consider very undesirable uses possibly for this particular area. But the right-hand box shows you the new uses that will be allowed in this PB district, including hotel, restaurants, et cetera, but specifically the retail uses that we need this, the reason why we need the rezone will allow for specifically this 28,000 square foot grocery center and other retail uses in the future. Again, I'd like to emphasize, you're basically enhancing the thing with mixed use opportunities while not losing any of the desirable uses allowed for the existing code. They were also, if you look, we'll talk about the comp plan, but again, all these proposed uses and the mixed uses now being allowed are very consistent with the comp plan. This slide shows kind of the comparisons, colors, if you can read these, existing being the upper left, showing our site in the middle, bounded to the west by the existing business professional residential, which is existing mostly all retail, including the King Super Shopping Center, the Walgreens, and other development along McIntyre. To the upper right, being the northwest of the site, is the existing Arvada West Shopping Center. As you can see, our site falls right between those. In the industrial zone, we feel that this is a really logical connection between those two zones, allowing for a mixed-use connection or link between those two, as shown in the side in the lower right. Again, as noted earlier, there are no residential properties really near our project. They're all buffered by the existing retail and or in more specifically really the industrial uses surrounding the existing building to the south, as well as retail to the west and northeast. The benefits of this change to the rezone, again, we see really, as staff concurred, really no downsides, only benefits to allow for the more trending mixed use zoning we find in most cities here in the Denver and suburban areas. The benefits specifically, we're promoting the grouping of complementary and professional business uses. We're providing harmonious relationships between the mixed-use buildings, the pedestrians, and the automobiles, specifically on our project. This particular parcel rezone will bridge the gap between the existing adjacent retail, commercial uses to the west, northeast of the property, as shown on the mapping. We retain most of the uses allowed under the industrial PUD zoning, but we're also expanding it for more robust mixed-use development, specifically for our Sprouts Farmers Marketplace at this time. It's allowing for what we consider a really valuable commercial and retail use, including neighborhood grocery, which the neighborhood has really expressed great support for. As noted in the staff report, the rezone request meets the rezoning approval criteria as described in detail, and as again was recommending, staff is recommending approval of same. The second approval we're requesting tonight as part of the public hearing is the amendment to the comprehensive plan to allow for mixed use. This obviously goes in hand with the rezone itself. This amendment specifically is needed as well to allow for a small format grocery, which seems to be very desired by the neighborhood and the city, as well as obviously our client. In general, there really were no negative impacts. There are some minimal traffic impacts per staff's conclusion following a very extensive traffic study. There's no public service impacts. Existing water, sewer, storm are adequate. We are adding a water quality system to the site to pick up the storm drainage from the parking lot that exists today. We're also contributing toward the improvements of some improvements at the intersection of 64th Avenue, Indiana, up to at least $25,000 contribution, mainly reflecting some left turn lane improvements suggested by the city. The proposed amendment, as noted in the staff report, meets the criteria for consideration and approval. And again, staff is recommending approval of this comp plan amendment to mixed use. I'll spend a little more time on this approval number 3, which includes our PDP, preliminary development plan, with specific site plan details in our building design. We obviously hope to follow this up if we receive your approval tonight with our final development plans with more details falling in line with this presentation. Hope you can all see this site plan fairly clearly. Again, as noted by Lucy earlier, the existing building footprint, the beige area, 28,000 square foot, overlays the existing office building, which will be demolished. The property is fronted by 64th Avenue to the north, Joyce Avenue to the east. The building is placed on the corner, expanded actually to have 360-degree architecture and consistent with most urban planning today, with trying to activate the corner as well as provide pedestrian connections. As you can see by this plan, the existing parking lot, which is being upgraded, is buffered from the street and visibility by the street by the actual building itself and the new and enhanced landscaping on site. We are saving some trees or replacing some of those that are not really in good shape or desirous type species, both around the entire building, in the parking lot, and some additional landscaping along the south buffer line. The access points noted earlier on Joyce Avenue from the east, that will be access to and from the intersection, signalized intersection. That's being widened to better accommodate customers, as well as fire access around the building, as well as truck deliveries. You can see the kind of cutout in the lower right of the building is a loading dock, which is screened by a decorative screen wall to the east, as well as some significant landscaping just to the east of the wall itself along Joyce Avenue. The building is now encircled by pedestrian sidewalks, which did not exist before. We're extending the Joyce Avenue sidewalk down to make a pedestrian connection with the entrance to the building. On the west side of the building, the sidewalk along 64th is being brought into the site and alongside the building to, quote, encircle the building and provide a nice, really wraparound pedestrian way, as well as along with some bicycle parking to be provided here for local shoppers as well. One feature you see along the left property line there, we've identified the Farmers Highline Canal. That is the irrigation ditch which cuts through Arvada. They have an easement on our property, but we were able to work with staff and make sure that we can allow for a future soft and hard trail along on top of our property between the canal itself and the parking area. That'll be approximately 15 foot in width. And again, that is proposed for future, but we are making sure we can provide that and accommodate it at this time. The building itself, I'll show you later, is really 360-degree architecture. It's obviously got exposure to 64th and Joyce, as well as the parking lot. Again, we're buffered from the residential, if you recall the aerial, by Walgreens, which is to the, quote, left or west of the property. The industrial building to the south buffers, along with other buildings, buffers this project from the residential to the south. And to the east of us are the existing industrial buildings buffering that area as well. We think this site plan and this use is very desirable, appropriate use for the site. And we've tried to utilize the existing parking lot, but again, we are enhancing it fairly significantly to bring it up to current standards for dimensions and landscaping. Just this is more of an FYI for reference with questions. This is the specific detailed PDP plan. Kind of demonstrates all the dimensions of the parking lot, all the easements we had to deal with in laying out the plan. We do meet all the required building setbacks, utility easement setbacks, the trail easement, sidewalk easements, et cetera, as well as the legal descriptions are included, for FYI. We've covered, I think we're covered. These are the highlights I tried to cover as far as the actual site plan and its benefits and new amenities. I'll walk you around the building starting from 64th Avenue. This is a rendering if you were eastbound on 64th, where you would have the opportunity to pull right, take a right into the access drive currently serving Walgreens that will be connected to our parking lot. So this is the facade. The grocery sign would be facing north, facing 64th Avenue. As you can see, we've tried to articulate the building on all four sides with windows, differing materials, et cetera. This is the view from the intersection of 64th and Joyce. If you were sitting at the intersection going westbound and look to your left, this would be the view of the building as it sits tightly into the corner. Again, well articulated. We did not treat this as a back of a building, but try to make it look like the front with various features and new landscaping. This is the view from the entrance at Joyce Drive. This is really the only location we can accommodate loading, but as you can see, we've included a highly decorative screen wall of fairly high wall with landscaping here to the right, also screening the loading dock screen wall. You can see the parking lot as you enter to the left, and that is the facade of the south side facing the parking lot. Again, articulated and treated somewhat as a front of a building as well, even though that's not the entrance. This is the view from the parking lot. If you were parking in the southwest corner of the parking lot, looking back at the building, showing a new landscaping. You can see it's a very articulated building. This is obviously not a prototype Sprouts. They do vary their building, but again, this has been site-specific designed, and we've reacted to staff's strong encouragement to pick up on the rural theme of some of the adjacent retail developments in the area, particularly the King Soopers and some other buildings on McIntyre. I think it's very appropriate. I call it more a rural contemporary theme. Coincidentally, we are doing a Sprouts Farmers Market, so they're also very happy with this type of facade. It reflects their image as well. I think it's very attractive. We have quite a bit of articulation with the gables, significant amount of windows, canopies, change in materials which include textured masonry walls of different colors, quite a bit of windows, awnings. There is a wainscot masonry accent treatment around the perimeter base of the building, as well as the sidewalk, which wraps the building and typically has some textured concrete and aggregate in that as well. Again, I think this is, I hope you find this to be very fitting to the area and complementary, somewhat unique. Obviously, a great improvement over the existing building, but very fitting in this neighborhood. There are a few minor code modifications to some of the typical design standards here in the city that we're requesting as part of our PUD, PDP. Again, they're pretty minor, but the first one, these are trying to identify it on the plan by number. Number one just being the overall parking lot ratio, requesting 4.32 per thousand versus the standard 5 per thousand, which is found to be more than adequate for historically for this type of grocer, including Sprouts, and also meets the current ITE traffic standards for a urban supermarket, as well as that is also the same ratio for a supermarket in a suburbia. Number two, as you can see, is just the setback from the right-of-way. We're going from 100 feet to 80 feet. We are meeting the setback requirements for the building. This is consistent with other recent developments along 64th. Number three is fairly minor, where we have 14 stalls in a row. Typically require an island every 12. We're asking a waiver on that. We do have a cart corral in the middle of that particular row. And that is the only really interior parking lot variance. The south parking, we're trying to maintain the existing curb line, which allows for an 8-foot buffer versus a 10-foot buffer. Again, we are adding landscaping along that south property line as well. That's basically the side of the industrial building that it's facing right now. Again, staff has reviewed this. They have a 20% modification that they can approve, and they have approved and make recommendations for approval with this, with your blessing as well. Back to, this is again the facade from the parking lot. One other minor modification we were asking for to allow us to kind of create this rural theme, kind of contemporary mixture of nice materials between masonry, metal, and stone, is the inclusion of metal siding. We're not proposing any kind of industrial look building, but it's a nice architectural metal panel, which currently now is not allowed per standards. I think it's a great mixture, reflects rural theme, works for Sprouts, and also provides a nice contrast to the other materials. We're using that on all 4 facades, but in a limited square footage. Again, this was supported by staff. We have added some additional windows and canopies as requested by staff as well. Again, seems very, I think, very fitting and appropriate for a farmer's market. Last but not least on my end, I will turn this over to Lucy shortly to walk you through the specific user and how our neighborhood meetings went, which were very positive, but I did want to touch base on the traffic study. Again, our third-party consultant, John Aldridge, spent significant time taking counts and analyzing the traffic generation by our project in conjunction with staff who performed a very extensive review of this as well. Bottom line is, looks like the existing improvements and intersections can easily absorb the new traffic generated by the Sprouts project itself. The impact to the individual intersections range from 3.7 to 6.4%. Low being McIntyre and Joyce, the higher being Joyce, because that's our intersection. That's pretty minimal. That relates to what is about the maximum peak hours, what we studied, about 150 cars per hour. As far as generation, that equates to a little over 2 cars per minute, which is very minimal. Despite our traffic impact study and kind of the agreements, we have agreed to contribute to a 10% share, or being up to 10% of traffic impacts to the Indiana and 64th intersection. That equates to up to $25,000 to help mitigate traffic and really some of the congestion that's really being generated by the existing projects along 64th Avenue. At this time, I'd like to turn over to Lucy, who can walk you through our neighborhood meetings, and I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. Thank you.
All right, really quickly, but we thought it was important. In terms of outreach, we did have a neighborhood meeting. The requirement is really for a 400, foot radius, but we really, you can see on the aerial, with staff's input, et cetera, we all agreed that it would be really valuable to reach out further, make sure we reached residences nearby that would be more impacted. So we actually went 3 times the distance. You can kind of see the aerial. We definitely reached out to 4 HOA residences and had a neighborhood meeting on the February 10th in an accessible location. We had a really good turnout. About 22 people came, presented the plan and answered their questions. The overall question probably of the night was there was a lot of question around traffic on 64th, predominantly around the existing level of traffic. One of the things that a couple people had asked was whether it was possible to time the lights on 64th. Following that meeting, staff was informed that Dr. Cog, or Denver Regional Council of Governments, is in the process of actually retiming those lights. So we reached out to those people who attended and emailed them and let them know that. I think you have, because we delivered it this evening. In addition to outreach, we have about 100 letters of support, which is not insignificant, of people saying they like this project, love this use. So just to give you a sense of the neighbors' perspective. So stepping back, this is a rendering, kind of a bird's eye view looking at the entrance to the store from the southeast. You just get a sense, Rob has done a great job. I'm not going to keep going about the architecture, but we really believe this is respectful for the site, the massing of the site. It just really worked out well, and this just gives you a feel for a little more of a 3D view of the same items you've seen already, but gives you a feel for that. So what about the user? Any questions you have there? Again, it's a Sprouts Farmers Market. Sprouts is a public company. It's a national grocer. They have, somewhat over 200 stores, and they're growing. They're in 13 states. They are a client of ours, and we've just had the pleasure of bringing them to different markets. And they are a really special retailer. They really bond with their community. They serve their community. Their strategy is to deliver fresh, natural, healthy foods. But in addition, they do it, and they really shared as a mission to do that in an affordable way, so that everybody can choose healthy if they so choose. Sprouts is open 7 days a week, 7 to 10. What's different, they are not the same experience as King Soopers. You might say, well, you already have grocery here. It is a really different experience. Hopefully you've all been in a Sprouts, but it is a small format experience. You walk in, it's open, you don't have to sort of guess what's down an aisle. You can get in and get out if you're an empty nester just, buying for the week, or you're buying for that day. It's just a very convenient and thoughtful format. They also, again, feature amenities for residents and businesses. They have prepared food, sandwiches, all of those things that would serve both a business lunch as well as groceries. Sprouts is expecting to have about 150 jobs brought to this location, and obviously sales tax would be pretty significant to the city from this use. So these are just pictures just to make you hungry. But clearly Sprouts focuses on fresh. So this is a major centerpiece of their stores. They have, but they're full service. They have a deli, a meat counter, seafood. They serve flowers. They have vitamins. They're really well known for their bins and their bulk food, and obviously the candies on the way out. But so that's Sprouts. We're really excited and really proud to work with them and bring them to your city. So just in conclusion, really to step back and, trying to make sure we're not keeping you too long, but we are really excited about this project. We really believe it to be a quality project brought to your city. We think it, in addition to bringing jobs and sales tax to the city, we believe this transforms what is an obsolete office building into a vibrant neighborhood amenity. We think it's harmonious and compatible with the specific location and the contiguous uses. And we believe, with the future trail system it enables, the pedestrian connection, the architecture, and the thoughtfulness of it, it really enhances the community as it is presented. So with that, thank you for your time. We have our team here to answer questions, and obviously, if there's a need for rebuttal, we'll reserve that right. Thank you.
Thank you. I now open the hearing for comments from the public. First, is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of the application? Go ahead and come up. I don't know if I swore you in earlier. No worries. Let me go ahead and just do it now. Okay. Is there anybody else who intends to speak who didn't get sworn in earlier? I'll do you all now. No? Okay. Let me just... Okay, go ahead and raise your right hand. And do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in matters before this commission is the truth and nothing but the truth? If so, please answer, I do.
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed. Please don't forget to spell your name for the record.
Okay. My name is Christine Kennedy, Chrisistine, Kennedy. I live at 6148 Holman Court in Arvada. I'm in the residential area that's just east of the proposed place. I'm here to speak in favor because I'm really excited about having a Sprouts nearby. I think it's a fantastic grocery store. I think that we definitely have a need for high-quality groceries. I know that a lot of people in the neighborhood were disappointed by the Walmart grocery store that came in. There were even protests outside on the first day. I also know that the people in this area are very protective of the growth that we have. I understand that there's a Home Depot proposed that was also fought back. But I think that Sprouts is exactly the kind of growth that we should have. It's small, it's high quality, it's a very personal experience, it's not a big box, it's not going to detract from the quality of the neighborhood. And I just want to speak for myself and on behalf of a lot of other people in the area that I've talked to that thinks that this is something that would really, really help the area, and we're very excited for it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak in favor? Is there anybody who would like to speak against the application? Okay. Seeing none. I don't think that there is any need for rebuttal. Is there anything you'd like to clarify?
We're good.
Okay. At this time, I'll close the public input portion of the hearing and now open it to questions from the commission. Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question is on the comprehensive plan amendment. And this has kind of been described as a bridge between similar uses to the west and to the northeast. And so my question is why the proposal is to designate this as mixed use, because one of the things that we've heard over and over and over from staff and the Planning Commission is the desire for fidelity in the comprehensive plan to the actual uses, which there's been an enormous amount of debate about, Mr. Rothschild. And the primary uses to the west and to the northeast are neighborhood, community, commercial. There's a little piece of mixed use south of the Indiana and 64th intersection, but primarily what we're bridging here are large areas of neighborhood, community, commercial. And this would seem to fit that land use perfectly. And everything that's being proposed here with the rezoning and the preliminary development plan would also fit within neighborhood, community, commercial. And I'm just wondering why the proposal is for mixed use when there is a single use proposed.
We did look at that carefully, and the primary consideration here is that we're going from a light industrial use to a more commercial use. But staff and the applicant felt it was important to rezone the property and change the comp plan designation in a way that still retained some of those light industrial uses. And so the commercial designation doesn't call out light industrial as an envisioned use for that designation, but mixed use still retains that light industrial nature. And so it seemed to be most similar going between what is there currently and what we see going forward. And so that was why mixed use was proposed to be the change here.
Well, unless we're preserving the possibility to redevelop this into something else in the future, that doesn't make any sense to me, because there's no other space available on the property that's in the amendment that could be used for anything else other than the neighborhood community commercial use that's being proposed. So I still don't get why mixed use is the answer here.
The mixed-use designation is still very similar to the commercial designation. I think, and maybe the applicants may want to speak to this a bit more as to why they felt that this was more appropriate in terms of their approach to the development of this site.
We're open to maybe limiting some of the uses allowed under the rezoning, if you like residential and such, but this is really what, when we first met with the city, this is what we were directed to go to. There wasn't, at the time, there wasn't really a zoning that would allow existing uses, including retail. So this was the new zoning code, and a new designation that seemed appropriate. The likelihood of going back to industrial is not there, but it does reserve that potential. And for potential uses, it seemed desirable for this particular parcel.
Yeah.
Again, in the rezone, I assume you could, if you wanted to limit something, exclude it, you could
Well,
do that.
the PUD BP zoning that's proposed here would still be allowed under a neighborhood community commercial land use designation. So that's, again, that's the part I don't understand.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. We are, as an applicant, open to a better solution. Honestly, we sat with staff, and at the time, and I think people in good faith were trying to say, the zoning allows different types of uses. The site's not big enough where we would have both an industrial and a retail. So in the context of what you're saying, this development is clearly not a mixed use in that context.
Right.
We are open if you all think, we really have a time frame that we're really restricted to, but so we'd hope that we don't have to go backward where we've gone forward, but you are right, that we expect this to be a single use for this development, and we expect it to be here a long time. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I have no problem with the zone. The zoning's not my issue.
Right.
It's almost more internal.
Right.
No one cares what the comp plan says.
Right.
People care about the zoning
Right.
because that's where the restrictions come into
Right.
play.
So I think everyone's been operating thinking that made sense. We are open if there's something better. We hope this might work just for expediency, but
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
I know you want to speak, Ms. Rothschild. Is this in the same line of thinking? Because there's someone else waiting.
For the applicant, I think this is an issue for staff of consistency over the last few years that's being raised. What you're proposing is inconsistent with what's being done over the last few years, where when we've changed the comp plan, it's been changed for that specific use. So if this is a shift in thinking, that needs to be stated explicitly, because I don't think it is consistent what's being proposed.
Well, if I may, when they did come forward with this development project, and we were looking at the property with its industrial zoning designation and industrial comp plan designation, and in recognizing that the city sees that we do have a shorter supply of industrial zoned properties, and it is an overall concern for the city to retain those properties so that we can continue to facilitate those uses. And so I think we as staff were trying to balance this proposal, which is commercial, but actually going into a space that's designated for industrial, where we have a short supply, but how could we move forward with this proposal, because it does seem to fit in line with the surrounding community. The community does want it, but retain those light industrial uses should the property be redeveloped in the long-term future. And so the comprehensive plan is that vision for the long term. And so I understand where you're coming from, because typically you do mesh the two together. Right, and so we're changing it here, and we were looking at just the broader policies that the city is looking at with our short supply of industrial uses, but also seeing that this project is a good fit here. And so what is a balanced approach to this? And so this was what we proposed and talked to with the developer.
Ms. Caswell?
I have an easier question. Thanks. My question is regarding landscaping and the preservation of existing species on the site. I know that's always a challenge, but by my count, it looks like only 10 of the trees, and there are some really nice mature trees on the site, only 10 will remain and 37 are going to be removed. Did anyone kind of try to explore with staff or the applicant as to how you might retain more of the mature landscaping elements on this site?
Yes. We had an arborist, did meet on site. We actually even met twice with the city forester and head of landscaping to walk the site, evaluate each tree specifically. In the back of your packet, I believe you have the actual maybe you're looking at the landscape plan is what you're referring to. L1 shows what can be retained and what cannot be retained. The trees that can remain significantly are at the southwest. Actually, if I have the marker, I can go to this particular sheet. Unfortunately, L1 is not there, but you see the trees along the southwest and south area can obviously be maintained. That includes some mainly pine trees. The trees along the western boundary, the larger trees are really huge cottonwoods, which are need to expand the parking lot by approximately 5 feet and accommodate a future trail. We decided those huge cottonwoods should be removed. The Farmers Highland Canal is also very happy to get rid of those because they see those specifically as a hazard and impedance for their maintenance of the Highland Canal. The other trees, you see they were dashed in. Obviously the ones to the west of the existing building, that's being taken over by the building footprint. Those trees, other trees existing surrounding the building are on an existing slope. Some of those are undesirables, like Russian olives. Some of the other ones just we cannot keep because of the grading required to accommodate the new building. Our building is larger than this footprint. Here, if you look at this, that's one thing it doesn't really show as much as the new landscape plan does, is that a lot of the trees are literally in the footprint of the existing. So we are maintaining, may not say as percentage-wise a great amount, but we are putting in some fairly large caliper trees, as many as we can see appropriate for the site, both in the parking lot area, around the building, while still maintaining some exposure to the signage on, quote, those angle walls that face the street. We do add significant landscaping along the east side as well. We have agreed to pay for or install additional caliper trees. I think it's 135 inches elsewhere in the city, whether it be a park or school or wherever the city feels that would be appropriate.
So, question for staff. So given what the applicant has just stated, it's safe to presume that they are meeting or exceeding whatever the city's requirements are with respect to the landscaping that's existing and to be installed at the site?
Yes, the plan was reviewed by the city's landscape architect. A lot of the trees that are on the site are considered to be invasive species, a lot of those larger trees, and so they don't have to be mitigated. But they are meeting the majority of their mitigation requirements on site and then have agreed to plant the deficit off-site. So they are in compliance with our landscaping standards.
We also
Thanks.
do exceed the open space area minimal as well.
Mr. Hannan?
Two questions. Bike access, I didn't see any bike racks or stuff like that, and every Sprouts has bike access, so it's got to be there somewhere. So I'm assuming it is on the plan, we just don't have that level of fidelity
Yeah,
yet?
we do have bike racks. I'm sorry,
I just couldn't find it. I
they're
know
usually
they have to be
typically put
there.
in by the entrance or on the south patio.
Okay,
Dick, are they on the landscape? Yeah, we do show a provision for them
No, it is.
specifically,
It's a-
but
it's
they'll
on-
be
it's on
located.
PDP front page.
yeah.
Right.
Bike rack, okay, I just missed it. Good, thank you. Second thing is the future trail access. Do we have any idea how long in the future trail is? Will I live long enough to bike there?
We've had a pedestrian easement there for decades.
Right.
And so the plan is to extend the path along there. There are no immediate future plans for that, though.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, as part of our plan, we are creating a curb cut and connecting the sidewalk to the driveway and creating at least the handicapped and ramps there right at the entrance drive off of Walgreens as well. So we did confirm that the trail can be built. Grady looked at that specifically for the city as well as the Farmers Highline Canal.
Ms. Rothschild?
Yeah, question for staff. To the south and west of this property are two open lots that connect to the little circle drive. Is there any right-of-way from the city in those to potentially connect that area to this lot?
Across the
That-
canal? you're
Yeah,
talking?
the
Yeah.
canal cuts across, yeah. No, there are no access easements between those two properties.
Okay. It would certainly make a cleaner flow of traffic, because then you'd have an entrance from a light off of McIntyre into the facility. That's why I asked.
There's a circuitous way to get through the site from Walgreens using that access drive,
Right.
but not
and
across the canal.
It's very
That driveway
circuitous.
does,
Yes.
yes.
And not particularly safe, because you're wandering between buildings. That's my concern. If there was a more direct route, it would be preferable, but if it's not
not
available, it's not
feasible, right.
available.
Mr. Kraus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question is about traffic flow as well. So this would be particular to the preliminary development plan. And my concern is that I would think that a significant amount of the users of this facility would be coming south on Indiana from the substantial amount of residential that we have to the north of this property. And my concern is that access from the west into this property is obviously very straightforward. Access from the east, they'll have to take a left at Joyce and enter through the property there. If you're coming south on Indiana and want to access this property, once you get into the right turn lane off of Indiana onto 64th, you've got about 400 feet to cross 3 lanes of traffic to get into the left turn lane onto Joyce. Otherwise, again, the only way into the property is, if you miss that, is to go down to McIntyre, take a left, and then wind around the Walgreens to get into the property that way. So I'm concerned that a significant amount of the customer traffic flow is going to have a tough time getting into the property safely. And I'm wondering, again, the traffic information that we have in the plan is largely focused on volumes, which I think are fine. But I'm really concerned about the flow into this property from the north.
Yeah, I think our traffic study identified the percentages of traffic coming from actually southbound Indiana. And let me find my correct notes here. Excuse me.
I'm not sure that a traffic study that talks about what it would be today is relevant, because there's a lot of planned development up
Seems to
Indiana.
be, I'm sorry, is there a?
A lot of
gonna be a
existing as
draw.
well.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just concerned
But I
about,
mean, if he gives us numbers to say it's only so many cars coming from
We're
the
showing up
southbound
about 20,
Indiana.
as far as distribution, about 20% of the traffic coming to our site would be coming through southbound Indiana, through that intersection. 33% is really eastbound, westbound on 64th, and the other 20% is coming from McIntyre. So of the total traffic count, the 20% is not huge. You do make a point as far as the distances between, but the study showed that there was adequate time to take a left given the stoplight. The traffic is stopped to be able to maneuver and cut into the left-hand lane, which is a designated left-hand turn onto Joyce.
well, to do that,
John, is there anything?
to do that, you would have to not use the right turn lane. You'd have to go to the light at 64th and then take the left, because otherwise, that curved right turn lane off of Indiana is going to put you almost all the way to Joyce. And if the traffic light is green for westbound 64th, then that continuous flow lane is going to have to stop in order for those people to get across the traffic.
Or you might end up with people going through the McDonald's parking lot.
Can I just clarify one thing that you said? You had asked a question about, John Aldrich's study takes into account growth and background growth. So he's not just looking at this as a moment in time. He's looking at those exact issues in a cooperative way with your all's traffic engineer. So this isn't just today. This is taking into account growth.
Projection over
You know,
there. Actually, next 20 years is what's
Yeah.
been projected in
I
the
think we've
traffic.
made the comment before, probably you, that that the traffic studies, especially in contentious questions, and this one certainly, there's a question of access, that we'd like to have those in the packet beforehand so we can review those. That probably would have been very appropriate for this particular one. My questions are all around access as well, so that's why I'm chirping in. Sorry, John, I know
Oh,
there's
no
your
worries.
questions, but if
John,
that's the
if you'd
case, I
like
would
to
have liked to
talk
have seen
about
that beforehand.
distance as far as
And even at 20%,
Question is
that's
being
of
concerned
150
about the
cars, that's 30
distance
cars
from-
per hour, which, at first, when I wrote that down, I thought, well, that's not 30 cars per hour isn't that much, but that is a lot. If you think about 30 cars per hour, cutting that corner and trying to get into a left turn lane and potentially causing backups or accidents, things like that. That could
Yeah,
be-
and
that could be
potentially
dramatic.
blocking that continuous right lane in order to make that 3 lanes of traffic to get left. That's my concern.
We do have one of the city's traffic engineers here tonight. Chris DeRoja is here, and so I think he might have some points of clarification too with the traffic study.
Okay.
Yeah, so 30 cars an hour to address that first. So some will come when they have a green indication, so they wouldn't be in conflict with westbound traffic, but some will turn right with that free flow channelized lane. And it is quite a short distance to weave over. If they do miss that movement, if it is heavy traffic, then they can actually U-turn at the
Right.
64th and Kendricks. They would do that preferably over driving down to the south and winding through the Walgreens access.
And is that 150 cars per hour, is that based on 20 years in the future? That's what it's expected to be? Is that accurate?
That's actually a site traffic attributed to the site. So the 20 years into the future accounts for background growth, general growth that passes through the area, and it also accounts for any background development adjacent to the site.
Yeah, that number, just to clarify, is it
So-
peak Saturday noon hours contributing to what is on a daily basis 27,000 cars on 64th Avenue. So that's why seemed like a lot, but it's really a minimal number. But so I want to make that clarification. That is a peak hour on Saturday, which is what we're required to look at, as opposed to normal everyday traffic, morning peak hour or evening traffic peak hour.
But I'm still unclear. That's a peak hour on a Saturday today, not sometime in the future. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's not really quantified in that sense. It's we look at existing, and then we add on the site, and we look at the build-out year. So that's kind of a short-term scenario, and then we try to make sure that the existing roadway or near-future roadway network can accommodate that. And then the 20-year time frame is helping us plan for more long-term mitigation that might be needed to either mitigate the site impacts or just any background development impacts that might not be attributed to the site. So it's their responsibility to identify those for us so that we could look into further mitigation if needed that might not be attributed to the site.
So understanding that the frame of reference I'm coming from and asking the questions is really around the future development up north on Indiana. And maybe you can't, but how can you, is there a way you can articulate for me what the presumed impacts are going to be, and if there's any mitigation that the city's going to take on themselves on that intersection in the future?
All right, where on Indiana are you just
Light
talking
and Rock
in
and the
general?
other developments that are currently approved but not yet built. It's going to increase the density up in the Indiana corridor, and presumably that's going to significantly impact the amount of traffic coming down Indiana.
Right. Currently, we are looking at that. It's another effort as part of some of the industrial sites there. So that's coming, but we don't have any conclusive information right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm sorry, John. It was your line of questioning. Did you have anything to wrap up?
Yeah, no worries. No, I mean, I'm just concerned because we've had this issue on another development several weeks ago where, again, we got numbers on traffic volumes, but the flows really didn't get the attention that they should have. And I mean, is a U-turn at Kendrick and McIntyre a desirable traffic pattern for 64th?
I think our community probably hasn't seen a lot of that. I mean, we're kind of getting to a tipping point where we're starting to become a little, busier traffic like Denver Metro. So we are seeing locations that use U-turn traffic, and you see that a lot, in more dense areas of Denver. So I think it's just kind of a paradigm shift. We'll start to see more of this, and we don't see it as being anything atypical for an urban area, no.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Connell?
Thank you. In reference, it was just mentioned about we're seeing a lot of U-turns, and we are. And I would not want this stopped because of the traffic flow or because of mention of U-turn, but maybe it needs to be considered somewhat more for the traffic flow if people are going to rely on a U-turn. I have seen it, I mean, on a personal level, I run, and I've seen so many people make U-turns where you can't count on. They're ready to turn. But I would not want this project stopped because of something like that. Maybe consider reviewing.
Can I just again emphasize that we are contributing to an impact fee that is going to be used on Indiana. So our development, which contributes 3% to 6% on our own, is contributing more to potential solutions as well. So hopefully we can be a catalyst as opposed to a problem.
I might be kidding myself in terms of walkability, but I'm looking at it and I'm seeing, some access from Hometown South and some of the other neighborhoods around. But I'm not sure that there's a way to get there from Wildflower Ponds. What's the sidewalk structure like between Wildflower Ponds along the south side of 64th and this site? It is good? Oh, okay. Okay, all right. In these particular renderings, it was all just one big gray block, so I couldn't quite tell what it was like. Okay.
There's a
And
continuous
there's going to
sidewalk.
be signalings and things like that are going to be added there for pedestrian access and so on and so forth at that intersection on Joyce?
Can you clarify the question about the traffic signal or pedestrian?
I'm wondering what the experience would be like for somebody on a bike or on foot trying to access the site from, through that intersection at Joyce.
From which direction?
I was asking about from Wildflower Ponds, but really from any direction.
Any direction.
I'm wondering how reasonable it is, how realistic it is. Mr. Rothschild rides that area all the time, so I might take that at face value if you say it's pretty good.
So I think the challenge from a pedestrian or biking standpoint is that the bike lane along 64th heading east ends at McIntyre. and you have to go up on the sidewalk, it would be nice if the sidewalk were wider, because I don't think there's room for a bike lane. From Wildflower Ponds, there is a sidewalk. It's a little constricted because there is a very large box that I think runs the signal there that sort of blocks visuality and some of the room to get by, but you can get there.
Okay, all right, thank you. I don't see any other lights. Are there any other questions or comments from the commission? No? Okay, well, that being the case, I would entertain a motion. There is no motion. Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really conflicted on the comprehensive plan amendment, mostly because, as we all know, that gets adjudicated here. That does not go to the City Council for their approval. So what we do here stands. I've listened to the explanation from staff. I agree with Mr. Rothschild that this is a significant departure from what we've heard over and over and over from city staff on similar amendments that would have been before this planning commission. So that does concern me. In the end, the difference between mixed use and neighborhood commercial, not that different, but, and because of that, I'm going to propose that it be approved. But I do think this is a departure from what we've been told over and over is the desire on this, from the city's perspective of how the comprehensive plan should be used. So I just wanted to make that comment. So given that, I move that CP 2015-0002, a resolution by the Planning Commission for the City of Arvada, Colorado, to amend the 2014 Arvada Comprehensive Plan land use designation pertaining to neighborhood grocery from industrial office to mixed use for property located at 15,000 West 64th Avenue be adopted. This motion is based on the considerations on pages 11 and 12 of the staff report.
Mr. Rothschild.
I don't have many meetings to put my 2 cents in, so I'm going to put my 2 cents in.
Every
So,
meeting counts.
being consistent with the past, I don't think there's a reason to change the comprehensive plan. It's not required in order to develop this facility. So, there's no reason to change the comp plan from what it is. It doesn't need to be as built. It is a comprehensive plan for the desires of the city. Second, from a consistency standpoint, I don't see any reason to change the comp plan to something that is not consistent with the current development of the plan, which has been the staff's policy over the years. So I will be voting against it.
Yeah, so I mean, I share the concerns, and I wish that it had been presented to us with the correct designation. In listening to the testimony, however, I came to the conclusion that because mixed use wouldn't be inappropriate for this use, and I don't see any potential problems with future mixed use. If I go back to what I try to keep as my underpinnings around, is this an appropriate use for this parcel of land, right? And it's not about the user, it's about the impacts, it's about this piece of property. My concerns are around access, not around the zoning. So in this particular case, I share your concerns, but I'm going to be voting for. Mr. Hannon, did you rescind it?
You said it.
Okay, all right. All right, any other comments? Then commissioners, cast your votes. And that passes 4-2 with Commissioners Sullivan, Connell, Kraus, and Hannon voting in favor, and Commissioners Rothschild and Caswell voting against. And is there, Mr. Kraus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving on to the rezoning, I move that Z 2015-0016, Neighborhood Grocery Rezoning from City of Arvada PUDI, Planned Unit Development Industrial, to PUD-BP, Planned Unit Development Business Professional, 15,000 West 64th Avenue, be recommended to City Council for approval. This motion is based on the findings of fact and the approval criteria on pages 12 and 13 of the staff report.
Is there any, Mr. Rothschild?
Yeah, this is a very nice project. I'll be supporting the proposal, but I did want to comment that I think before it goes to council, that a more comprehensive analysis of traffic needs to be done. And I don't think an appropriate response is that we will plan on U-turns in the future is acceptable.
Mr. Hannan?
I echo those comments. This is the second one in this about a month that we've heard U-turns being the right solution for access. That is very seldom the right solution. It's quite a dangerous thing to do. And for those of us who are old in Colorado and especially Arvada, who have big old trucks, it's a little difficult on many of our streets to do a U-turn. And so I'm concerned about that being our solution to so many traffic issues. I would think that in the future it'd be nice to have much more comprehensive review of traffic and access and to sites that we're using.
Ms. Connell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My feelings reflect what has been said based on just relying on a U-turn. Possibly it's because we're growing quickly and there is more traffic, so that if something like this is considered again, maybe there could be a better recommendation.
Ms. Caswell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree, I support this project, and you've done a great job bringing it before us, but we, as a planning commission, have not been getting great answers or information on a consistent basis to our concerns about traffic issues, and I think all of us would like to see that addressed by staff.
Yes.
So my comment would be that this is about the zoning. I've already stated what I thought about the zoning. I do feel like this zoning is I mean, I'm comfortable with the zoning on it. I think my questions about access are going to come up in the next one, in the PUD. So commissioners, cast your votes. Oh, I'm sorry, wait. Psych. Okay, go ahead and cast your votes. Did I really just say psych? Was it 1982? Okay. And that passes, what is it, 6-0, all commissioners present voting in favor. Okay, and Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that PDP 2015-0014, Neighborhood Grocery Preliminary Development Plan, 15,000 West 64th Avenue, be recommended to City Council for approval. This motion is based on the findings of fact and the approval criteria on pages 13 and 14 of the staff report.
Is there any, Mr. Hannan?
For staff, as we look at the traffic here, might be worth considering the improvements that are going to be made to 64th and Indiana, doing something similar to what we have on Sheridan and I-76, where if you wish to turn left on Ralston 58th, you're required to go to the light and turn right at the light instead of blocking the intersection and trying to cross over 5 lanes of traffic there. Something like that ought to be considered. And again, more information on traffic would be greatly appreciated.
Ms. Caswell.
I had forgotten to ask one question, and it does relate to access. I thought I heard the applicant say that there is no cross-access agreement with Walgreens in place right now. Is that correct?
That's incorrect. There is the existing access easement exists.
There is. Thank you.
Yes, there wasn't an existing curb cut in today's current condition, but the easement exists.
Thank you.
This pains me. I mean, I love this user, and I'm very excited about this project, and my gosh, I really, really want this to happen, but I think I'm going to have to, I'm troubled by the access, particularly on the southbound Indiana. So, commissioners, cast your votes. And that passes 5-0. Commissioner Sullivan voting against, all others and present voting for. 5-1, I'm sorry. I'm so used to saying 6-0. Okay, well, be sure to follow up with staff. I'm sure you are familiar with the process, and they'll help you as you proceed on to City Council.
Yeah, appreciate your time and input, and we will certainly review traffic. We do, just for the record, this was a very extensive traffic study. Of course, the one particular movement that maybe was not focused on, we will look at that along with staff as such. But we have all the data, at least everything is there to look at. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your approval tonight.
Okay, we're moving on to other items. I think I'd make a plea to staff to please, this is continually getting more urgent around the traffic questions. So I would ask that maybe we have better traffic answers and information provided to us. And if we would have had an answer that gave me a clear, I guess I should have said this during the motion, but if I had a better answer from the traffic department, I probably, would have voted differently. But I didn't see a vision. I didn't see where there was a clear vision to that. So, so more traffic information, please. All right, I'm sorry, are there other items?
Just wanted to mention that your next meeting is April 19th. That'll be the next hearing with a case in the Village at 5 Parks. And there is a workshop with the City Council and Urban Renewal Authority Board on April 11th. You've all been invited to, so just a reminder of that.
Okay, thank you. All right, and with that, we are adjourned.